Can I use different types of meat in this recipe? Well, we're talking about cat food. My name is Joanna Trautman, and this and a bunch of other questions are what I want to answer today. Right now, I have some of my food in my hand. We are going to set up my staircase, which I have 6 of the cats inside with me. Everyone else is outside right now. They're going to have a little snack, and we're going to talk cat food while they do it. This will be fun. Okay, they are enjoying their food right now. This is the chicken recipe, and not everyone's cat is going to be this crazy about the cat food. This took some time. We've had a few finicky eaters, but that was like 5 years ago. At this point, this is what we get every day, and it was not like this until I started making homemade food to go with it. So back to our questions today. Can I use different types of meat in this recipe? This happens to be the whole chicken recipe that they're eating right now, along with some dry kibble. The answer is yes, and the answer is also no. I have a few different videos already where I've done dark meat chicken, I've done whole turkey, that's a 2-video series, I've done whole bird chicken, which is what this is, and I've done salmon. And that is because I selected those meats for the type of proteins and the type of amino acids they're rich in. The reason, so in that sense, it is yes, you can use different meats in this recipe. But the answer is also no, because not all meats have the same type of proteins in them. And that's where it gets really interesting. So protein is, the word protein and the molecule protein, it's actually kind of like a giant category statement, like a nonfiction book in a library. There's all sorts of nonfiction books in a library. It could be about dinosaurs. It could be about building a train. It could be about the history of the Civil War in the United States, but they're all nonfiction. Well, proteins are kind of like that in the molecular world. Proteins are made up of little tiny, I would call them almost like Lego-like pieces called amino acids. There's over 700 amino acids found in nature, whether they're in plants or in fungi, in animals. Any of those things, they all have different amino acids in them. Now, cats have some proteins that they make themselves, or they can make these, their bodies can synthesize their own versions of these amino acids from what they eat, but there's other amino acids and they're considered essential. Their bodies cannot make them, so they have to eat them. As humans, we have similar essential amino acids, but the list is different because we have different metabolisms, different digestive tracts, and quite frankly, I'm not a cat and they're not human. So there's different needs as far as their protein goes. So here's where it gets interesting with meat. So poultry, like chicken and turkey, if you can happen to catch tiny little birds like what they like to catch outside in the wild, they have meat that is very high in something called taurine, Taurine. It's one, again, of over 700 amino acids, but it's one that cats cannot make inside their own bodies. They have to eat it. Taurine is developed in muscle tissue, specifically muscle tissue that gets a lot of activity. So birds, because they have to fly, they develop a lot of taurine in pretty much all of their muscle tissue. Their heart tissue obviously is very high in taurine because it beats constantly throughout the day. So turkey and chicken is the reason why I use those. That's like grocery store meat that I can get a hold of easily where I live that are rich in taurine. Now, fish, depending on what type of fish it is, can also be very rich in taurine. Like salmon is considered high in taurine, as is trout, which is another great alternative, a freshwater alternative to salmon as far as being nutritious for cats. The meats that I've been asked about that I have not yet done recipes on are beef and pork, and that is because just as they are not rich in taurine. Cows kind of stand around all day and eat. They move a little bit, but they are not running for their lives. Let's go see. I think I have a cat getting into the cat food. Oh, is this Annie? Oh, okay. I'm gonna give them a little bit someone will come up on the table. So I keep dry kibble in their diet partially for my convenience. I made my own dry kibble a couple of years ago. They love it. If you have time, it is actually a great alternative because you know what's in it. That's the advantage of making your own food. However, it is very time consuming because you essentially have to make the wet version of the food and then dehydrate it again. So it's time consuming. So back to the question of different types of meat, yes and no. Some of them you can use just right out of the grocery store. Others you require much more serious supplementation for things like taurine, as well as a few of the vitamins and minerals that fish and poultry are high in, and pork and other red meats are not. I had a wonderful question a while ago from someone who lived in Australia, and they asked about kangaroo meat. Well, a little bit of research, apparently it is taurine-rich, mostly because kangaroos jump everywhere. So those big leg muscles get a lot of activity, which develops taurine in their tissue. So that's the short and long answer on can I substitute different meat. This had cat food in it, so they think it smells amazing. Okay, question 2, and we're gonna keep filming as long as we can. I don't cook when I have cats in the house because these guys are crazy, but they make me smile. So question number 2, how do I know if my cat is getting everything that it needs or all of the necessary nutrients in from the rest of the food that I'm showing you how to make, the chicken recipe or the turkey recipe? Well, you can just simply trust the fact that I did some research. That is an option. But interestingly, nutrient requirements, they really are a range, and each cat is going to be a little bit different. You have to be able to watch your cats and make sure they are, make sure their coats look good. They should be shiny. You should be able, to have a cat at a healthy weight. You should feel just a little bit of tissue over the ribs. You shouldn't feel every rib through, but you should be able to feel the ribs. So if you can't feel the ribs, that may mean your cat is a little bit too heavy. And yes, I'm gonna clean this counter after we're done. These guys are all really healthy. This one is a senior cat. These guys are pretty young. They're only about a year old, so they're still juvenile. Oh, well. But that is really, you have to watch your cat and watch for signs that stuff is not agreeing with them. So this is Einstein. This orange tabby is Ryder. The gray tabby with the white paws, her name is Ollie. And again, she's the senior that I have inside right now. Isn't she pretty? And then we've got when we have Lulu, she's she's the honorary cat. I call her my wolf cat. Now she actually has dog food. For a while she would get the cat food as gravy on top of her kibble, but she now has her own dog food recipe, which is different. That's another question I get a lot. Can you use this as dog food? The answer is kind of, but not really. Dogs have different nutrition requirements. They actually need less fat and varying amounts of protein, and they need different nutrients in it. Oh my goodness. All right, Ryder. All right, next question. What supplements should I add to make this a complete meal for my cat? If you can follow the recipe the way I developed it or filmed it, it is considered complete according to the U.S. national guidelines for the veterinary guidelines for cat nutrition. However, if you can't do one of the ingredients or something like that, you could always supplement it with, say, dry kibble for part of their diet. I do it partially for convenience, and also it's supposed to be better for their teeth. Or you could buy a cat supplement. Other than that, you should not need to supplement. A great question, how should I store this cat food? I pressure can mine, but if you don't pressure can, pressure canning a meat-based cat food is actually a pretty big project to take on, and freezing it is a completely great option. So what you can do, so this I stored in the fridge after I open it. I've added water to mine because it gets really, really thick and solid. Let me show you what it looks like. I'm gonna keep an eye on my cat food. So in the cabinet, I store it much like this. You see how it gets really thick? So when I reconstitute it, I'm adding I'll take about half of it out of the jar and put it in a different jar. And then I will add water to it and stir it. And that's what I put in their food for their daily meals. Hi, Einstein. This white little guy is Einstein. Oh. All right, let's see. How should I store this homemade food? Once it's open, store it in the fridge. It has to be refrigerated. How long does it stay fresh? If you're just keeping it in the fridge, it's a little bit over 7 days because this is chicken. That's the same meat guidelines for cooked chicken that are standard according to the USDA. However, it will store for over 6 months in your freezer, as long as you seal the container and all that good stuff. Can I freeze this cat food? And if so, how can I defrost it? I have an entire video on how to freeze and store cat food in the freezer. In that video, I use a vacuum sealer and then the food grade plastic storage bags. They are not, again, optimal because it's plastic. We're learning more and more about how it's not great for anything food related, but I already have it. And if you don't have the option of doing like glass storage, like pressure canning, I say use either Ziploc freezer bags or the vacuum seal bags, that system if you already have one. And again, it keeps for about 6 months. Now, the key with freezing the cat food and defrosting it easily, it has to do with surface area. When I put the food in the bag, I'm using this quart-sized bag. Now I'm gonna move back over by my cat food just so I can keep an eye on it. When you put the food in the bag, you want to make it as flat as possible and not let it get more than, say, 1 inch thick, because number one, when you store it in the freezer, you can lay them flat and just keep stacking up, and you can absolutely use smaller bags if you'd like. But then when you go to take it out, it's much faster to defrost or thaw out this flat surface because there's extra surface area than if you let it all clump up, and it's sitting, I can't get it. If it's all sitting kind of in the bottom and it's this big clump of food, it's difficult to get the heat to the middle so that it thaws out quickly. I thaw mine in either in the fridge overnight, or if I forget, and which has been known to happen, I put it in a little bit of warm water and let it thaw out that way. You just have to keep an eye on it because every once in a while these plastic bags might have a hole in them and then you got water going into your cat food. But that is how I do it. I do not microwave their food, mostly because I do not like to microwave anybody's food, cat, dog, or my own, so my microwave is a bread box. But that's a whole different video. So that's how I would thaw it out. Are there any grains or vegetables that I should avoid including for my cat's health? Yes, 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 yes. Do not give your cats onions, garlic, scallions, anything in the allium family. It is very, very hard on their systems and can make them very, very sick. So I know it makes our food taste wonderful, and for the human system, it's pretty healthy. For a feline system, do not give it to them. It's very, very damaging. Citrus is not good for them. Sugar is not good for cats. They cannot taste sweet. So just because you think it tastes great, they actually can't enjoy that part of the flavor. What they're after usually is the fat content of whatever food that they're so curious about. So interestingly, I know I've seen some people give their cats stuff like blueberries. It won't actually harm them. And the antioxidants that are in the blueberries can be beneficial, but the sugar is in no way helpful to their cat. So sweet is bad. Garlic, onions, scallions, anything in the allium family is very, very bad. Citrus is very, very bad. And there's a list of other vegetables that you want to give very little of. Now, vegetables and grains in general shouldn't be more than 10 to 15% of their calorie intake, which means how much energy they're getting out of their food. So most of the food what they're getting out of it for, look at him eyeballing this food. You'd think they hadn't eaten today. Most of what they get from their food comes from the meat that is in it. They are obligate carnivores. The vegetables and the grains that I put in actually are a very small percent of the energy that's in their food. Even though it looks like a lot, it's not a lot of energy. So your molecules for proteins and fats, which are what the meat has, they're much bigger when it comes to energy, than plant molecules. That's just kind of the way it works. Let's see, what is the best way? Oh, this is a good one. What is the best way to transition my cat from commercial cat food to homemade cat food? This can be so critical, and the rule is a tiny bit at a time. It's a very gradual transition. Cats have delicate digestive systems, so if you just abruptly switch their food, whether it's from one dry kibble to another, or dry food to wet food, or from commercial food to homemade, you need to start with a very tiny amount of the new food, and maybe like a teaspoon mixed in with something that they already accept and they're doing fine with. So a tiny bit of food with their regular food, and you leave that for several days, and then you substitute another portion of it for the new food, and so on and so forth, until eventually, over a several week period, they're fully transitioned to the new food. If you shock their system, you're gonna have problems like diarrhea or constipation. They may simply refuse to eat, and it may not be that they don't like the food, it's simply the fact that they want the kind they're used to. So that is very, very important, and it actually gets into how can I make sure my cat doesn't reject the food? And that is being super patient and going really, really, really slow on the transition to a new food. Like I would with a picky cat, maybe who has had only one type of food their entire life, and you're thinking like they're not super healthy and you kind of want to make some changes to it, I would still take it very, very slowly, a teaspoon at the most in their in the food that they accept, mix it in really, really well, and then see what they do with it, and give that like a week of doing just that amount in there, and then increasing to the proportion of the new food to the old food. That is the guidance from pretty much any animal care and veterinary site that I have found, also anyone I've talked to. That is the best guidance. Oh, this is a big one. Should I cook the food or leave it raw? All right, here's the deal on the raw diets. The biggest reason that proponents of the raw diet say, oh, the animals need to eat raw food, is because they say that cooking it degrades the taurine. Because if you look it up on Wikipedia, it will actually say that. However, if you go deeper and start reading the chemistry research that's been coming out in the last 8 or 9 years, interestingly, taurine does not degrade. It actually shows no signs of degradation. At the highest temperature that I saw it tested was 572 degrees Fahrenheit for a sustained period of time. I'm not going to be cooking this chicken at 572 degrees, or this turkey, or this fish. Like, the entire thing would be absolutely ruined. Everything's gonna be charred at 572 degrees, let alone the taurine. So at the cooking temperatures that we use, which are what is used to kill parasites, like tapeworms, roundworms, pinworms, as well as very, very deadly microorganisms such as Salmonella, Giardia, toxoplasmosis, E. coli. These should kind of, Shigella, these should be kind of ringing a bell. These can all be in raw meat. So that is why we cook it. Cats, yes, they have a slightly different digestive tract to what we have, but they are absolutely susceptible to those microorganisms, whether they're the parasites or the bacteria, and it builds up over time. Now, the argument, but they eat raw food in the wild. Yes, they absolutely do. They kill it right then and they eat it. And yes, they have roundworms, pinworms, heartworms. They have all of those parasites in the wild because they're eating raw food. Now, the foodborne illness thing, the E. coli and the Salmonella and some of those others, that little problem, that's not, if they ate the food right as soon as it was killed, the E. coli and the toxoplasmosis and the giardia and the shigella and salmonella, they're not nearly the problem, because by the time an animal is butchered to the time it gets to the grocery store to the time you serve it to the cat, that has allowed those microorganisms, like basically eons in bacteria timelines, to reproduce and form complete colonies that can be absolutely deadly to your cat or to you, which is why we cook our food as humans, but also why we should cook our food for our cats. So yes, cook the meat. You're not ruining the protein by cooking it. We are not cooking it at over 572 degrees Fahrenheit, which is around 300 Celsius. So that little argument is out. I think that's enough for this video. My cats have pretty much lost interest in me. But if you like these answers, if you have more questions, comment. I got these questions out of the comments. I read them. I respond to as many as I possibly can. But without you guys, I don't know how to help you. I don't know what questions you need answered, what type of recipes you need some help with. So yes, interact, like, yes, like, subscribe. It's right below me somewhere, right down here, and comment. Again, that's how I stay in touch with you guys. And again, a few questions and answers about cat food.